This is demo 20, how to use the coil tool, and mostly how to set up for the coil tool because it takes a bit of setup. So to set up for this coil, this is a coil. I had to first create an axis that the coil would wrap around, and then also create a shape on a plane that would actually be wrapped around, which in this case was a small circle right on this work plane. So we're going to do, I could just mirror this to the other side, but to show you how this works, I'm going to create a coil on this other side now. And so a couple of things. In order to create we need an axis to go straight through the circle. So this is the axis tool. I can click on the one that's easiest to use is normal to a plane through a point. And so if I click on this plane, I also need a point to go through, which I don't have right now. I shouldn't have this point, so I want to get rid of it. So it wouldn't normally be here for you. And so to make that show up, I can first click on point and tell it to make a point in the center point of loop of edges, and that will help me select this shape, which will create a point in the center. Now I can go back and use that tool again, normal to a plane through a point. So I have normal to a plane and then through a point. You have to click on both and then you'll get an axis to appear. So this is step one. This is what our coil is going to wrap around. Next, we need to create a work plane that is, it can really be anywhere around this point, because on the work plane we're going to create the shape, the distance away from the axis that we want. So I'll just show you how this works. I could create it from the top. For this one, I created it from the side. I'm going to try it a different way just to show you that it can go either way. And one new trick I just learned today is that I can measure inside of this work plane tool, which is pretty useful. I know this one's going to need to be negative because I want it to go the opposite direction that the arrow is facing. And so I can now measure, let's say from the top to maybe the center of the circle, and it thinks it needs to go down 3, and so I'm going to click OK. And then I think that a plane went down in here, work plane 5. I don't really like where it is, so I'm going to try to make it a little bigger by grabbing the corner when I see those arrows. And there I can see the arrows again, so I'm going to grab the corner. Okay, now I have a big enough work plane for me to see. It doesn't matter if you can see it or not, but it sometimes makes it a little easier. So now I'm going to do a new sketch on that plane. And here's the trick. If I make my circle far away from the axis, then the coil is going to be very wide. It's going to extend beyond this cylinder, which is fine. You just have to decide how you want it to look. If I make the circle really close into the axis, like this, then it's going to have a really thin wrap around. So I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to go, and the other side I did it pretty much on the outside by the circle. And then you'll want to size your circle. I think I made the other size 0.175. That just worked out with the sizing. Also, if you, I'm going to hit escape to go off the circle tool, you can have the circle start out close to the edge of your, whatever you want the coil to look like it's coming out from, or I can move it further away. It doesn't matter. I'm going to move mine pretty close because that's how it was on the other side. And then now we're all set up, so I can click Finish Sketch, and now we're ready to use the coil tool. And to do that, it's over here, and I'm going to zoom in so we can see a little bit better what's happening. So I'm going to select this as my profile, and then click on the axis and select this axis, and now it's wrapping around that axis. And so this doesn't look very good so far, so now I need to go into the coil size, and there's a lot of options we have. First of all, a pitch is how far apart the coils are. I'm going to go ahead and change the revolutions first. This tells you how many coils to have, so I'm going to try 10. I think I did 8 on the other side, so maybe I'll go back to, now it's doing 108, so I'll do 8. And then the pitch is how far apart, like how tightly they're linked together. So I think I could try 2 just to show you that it separates them. And I think I made mine 1.5. 1.5 looks about right. And so here's where it really gets fun. I could go ahead and click OK, and I have a nice coil here. Also, you can see that my circle that I started from was bigger on this left side than the right side. I can tell that because this is a thicker shape that's wrapping all the way around this. So if I wanted to, I could also do a couple things. I could go into the sketch where I first created this circle, and I could change the diameter of the circle, which was this number. Whoops. And I could change it to maybe 0.15. And when I do that, it's gonna, well, it moved my circle, so I'll have to move it back over. And then if I finish the sketch, it's gonna make the whole coil thin up a little bit. You couldn't see it very easily because that was not a big difference that I made. So let me try that again, actually. I'm going to make this maybe 0.1. And that really made it move. Okay, so that's going to thin it out. And then if I right click and do edit feature on the coil, I can also taper, which is this box. If you give it a positive taper, it's going to go outwards. Let me try that, maybe 5 degrees. And then if you give it a negative taper, I'm going to try that. It goes to 5 degrees. And so I can also do something in between that, 4, 3. I'm going to change this maybe back to a 6. I'm trying to make them kind of match, even though they're not exactly the same. Obviously, to make them match, I would need to do a mirror. Okay, so that's pretty close, and that's how you use the coil tool. You don't have to have a taper on it, but a lot of times you'll have a coil that will kind of fizzle out or grow depending on what your usage is. And if I want to make these work planes disappear at the end, there's one thing I haven't shown you yet, which is if you go in View and Object Visibility, if I'm done with my entire spaceship and I want to turn off all of the extra stuff, I can turn it off in this box all at once, which is pretty cool. And that's the coil tool.